the Mongol warrior, built the largest contiguous land empire in history. 60% of the world's population lived under Mongol rule or Mongol threat. They defeated the Chinese, the Persians, the Russians, the Poles, the Hungarians, and the Abbasid Caliphate, often simultaneously, across different terrains, climates, and enemies. No army in recorded history has matched that. Historians spent 8 centuries explaining it with tactics and leadership. They were asking the wrong question. Modern paleogenomics, the science of pulling ancient DNA from burial sites, is now giving us an answer no history textbook ever has. And it is not comfortable. Because the skeletal evidence says these men were not just better led. They were biologically distinct. His bones were denser than a farmer's by 20%. His shoulders were permanently remodeled by drawing a war bow exceeding 160 pounds of pull-A weapon. Most modern soldiers cannot draw even once. His body generated heat at -35 degrees Celsius, not because of furs, because his genome had been rewritten to burn fat silently, efficiently, without shivering, without slowing, without stopping. He was on horseback before he could run. He could fire an arrow backward at a full gallop, and he could sustain this for days across frozen rivers, through mountain passes while the armies of China, Persia, and Eastern Europe froze, starved, and broke. The chronicles called him unstoppable. Modern science is now explaining why that was never a metaphor. The answer is not written in conquest. It is written in his DNA. Popular history has one explanation for Mongol dominance: better organization, better leadership, a genius named Genghis Khan. That explanation is wrong. New research shows the Mongol warrior was not just strategically superior, he was biologically superior. The advantage was not just in the planning, it was cellular. You cannot compare him to a medieval European knight who trained from adolescence, because the Mongol was being shaped from before he was born, by genetics, by diet, by climate, by thousands of years of step selection pressure working on the human body like a forge works on steel. One study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that Golden Horde elites carried a specific genetic lineage traceable directly to the Mongol imperial bloodline. A line not just forged by conquest, but by millennia of natural selection that the sedentary world never experienced. History gave you the tactics. Science is now giving you the biology. And the biology changes everything. Everyone covers the tactics, the cavalry charge, the genius of Genghis Khan, the psychological terror. Nobody talks about the genome. And the genome is where this story gets truly strange. We have limited ancient DNA samples, but what we have points in one direction. The Mongol warrior was not made by training alone. He was selected for. Genomic scans of ancient steppe populations reveal signatures of positive selection genes actively favored by nature because they produced warriors who survived where others died. The battlefield wasn't just Central Asia. It was the entire Mongolian plateau, for 50 generations before Genghis Khan ever drew a sword. Nature was running the experiment, he was just the result. His bones kept a record of his entire life. His femur showed hypertrophy at the adductor tubercle, where the inner thigh muscles anchor, because he had been gripping a horse with his legs since age 3. His hip joint was permanently altered, widened pelvic basin, modified femoral head, structural changes that made dismounting feel unnatural because his skeleton had been architecturally redesigned for the saddle. His shoulder told an even more extreme story. The acromion, the bony tip of the shoulder blade, frequently failed to fully fuse in Mongol archers. In modern populations, that is a defect. In the Mongol warrior, it was an adaptation. It granted a wider draw range, allowing him to pull a 160-pound composite bow deeper than any fully fused shoulder joint could physically allow. His spine was permanently asymmetrical, reshaped by thousands of hours of unilateral loading, hardwired for long-range projectile combat. His cortical bone, the dense outer shell of the skeleton, was measurably thicker than the farmers and infantry his armies destroyed. The largest elite burial specimens recovered from the Ulutow region of Kazakhstan Golden Horde mausoleums excavated and analyzed in early 2026 confirmed it. Clear Mongolian ancestry. Skeletal robusticity consistent with intensive mechanical loading beginning in early childhood. These were not soldiers who trained hard. These were bodies structurally transformed by a lifestyle that started before they could walk. Here is what the numbers actually say. The transition from nomadic to sedentary life produces a 20% reduction in bone mass. That means the farmers the Mongols slaughtered were already operating with structurally inferior skeletons before the first arrow flew. It gets worse. Genomic scans found that power-associated genetic variants, the same ones found in elite athletes today, were significantly more common in steppe populations than in modern humans. And then there is chromosomal region 3p12.1, a selection signature that emerged approximately 50 generations ago, timed precisely to the late antique Little Ice Age, a period of savage cold and drought that killed the weak and rewarded the metabolically resilient. Nature culled an entire population. What survived was harder, denser, more efficient. By every biological measure, the Mongol warrior was not operating with a military advantage over sedentary populations. He was operating with a species-level advantage. So how did this happen? Three forces working simultaneously. Climate. The Mongolian plateau hits -35°C in winter. Genomic scans reveal strong positive selection in the TRPM8 gene, the body's primary cold sensor among East Asian and Siberian populations. This variant rewired the Mongol body to generate heat through non-shivering thermogenesis, burning fat silently and efficiently while rivals shivered themselves into exhaustion. Diet. The Mongol warrior lived almost entirely on red meat and fermented dairy. His FADS gene cluster was optimized to process saturated animal fat as clean fuel, the same diet that would send a medieval European soldier into metabolic collapse was jet fuel for him. Childhood. Riding, archery, and wrestling from age 3 triggered epigenetic changes during puberty, increased growth hormone responsiveness, higher muscle fiber density, deeper skeletal remodeling. No adult training program can replicate what happens when the body is loaded that hard, that early. Environment, genome, developmental timing. All three pushing in the same direction for 50 generations. The result was not a soldier. It was a biological weapons system. But here is the part nobody talks about. His gut. The Mongol diet was almost entirely meat and dairy. Historians assumed this was a liability on campaign, the kind of digestive breakdown that has ended more armies than any enemy ever has. The evidence says the opposite. Approximately 95% of Mongolians are genetically lactose intolerant, and yet dairy was the foundation of their entire military logistics system. So how? The microbiome. Ancient metagenomic analysis of dental calculus from steppe dwellers reveals that Mongols had been fermenting milk into yogurt, curd, and kumis for over 5,000 years, using lactobacillus and bifidobacterium bacteria to predigest the lactose before it ever entered the body. This microbial bypass meant the Mongol army carried its entire food supply on 4 legs. No grain caravans, no supply lines, no slowing down. While every sedentary army in history was strangled by logistics, the Mongol warriors' gut bacteria had already solved the problem. 5,000 years before the first conquest began. History calls the Mongol warrior an anomaly. a savage disruption that came from nowhere, won everything and vanished. The science says the opposite. The Mongol was not the anomaly. We are. By every biological measure examined: bone density, cold tolerance, metabolic efficiency, gut microbiome sophistication, power-associated genetic variants, the Mongol warrior sits closer to the optimized baseline of what the human body is actually capable of producing. We are the departure. The weakened skeleton, the inefficient metabolism, the body that forgot what it was built for. Centuries of sedentary living, grain dependency, and physical inactivity quietly dismantling everything natural selection spent 50 generations constructing. The Mongol warrior was not built different from us. We were built different from him. And the science is now making that impossible to ignore. Everything you were told about the Mongol warrior was built on the wrong question. History asked how he conquered the world. Science is now answering why his body made it inevitable. The genome does not lie, the skeleton does not exaggerate, and the evidence buried in thousand-year-old bones, ancient dental calculus, and the DNA of the Golden Horde elite points in one direction. Toward a human being so precisely optimized by climate, diet, genetics, and childhood forging that the conquests were almost a biological foregone conclusion. Almost inevitable before he was born. If this changed how you see history or how you see yourself, hit subscribe. There is a lot more buried evidence that the textbooks have not caught up to yet. Stay curious, stay ruthless. Keep questioning everything history told you were already settled. Please like, comments, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.